Chapter 14, Alpaca Antics. As George jumped up and dashed away from the open window, Mapani began to laugh. "Your beast is really very friendly," he said. "It is an alpaca, a grass-eating animal, and gentle." To prove this, he stepped to the next table where part of a plate of salad had been left. The Indian picked up a lettuce leaf and held it out to the alpaca. The animal nibbled it quickly. George took another piece and extended it to the alpaca. She chuckled. "I'm sorry, old boy, but we don't happen to serve grass in this dining room." The remark made Bess giggle. Getting up her courage, she too offered a piece of lettuce to the animal. When the girls stopped feeding him, their reproof was an indignant "Nyah, nyah." At that moment, a waiter came in with a tray of food. He set it down, went to the window, and clapped his hands. In Spanish, he told the beast to go away. Lazily, the alpaca walked off, its sheep-like head held disdainfully above its long neck. "Oh, girls! His family!" Carla exclaimed. On the roadway just below the hotel stood a female and two baby alpacas. "Aren't they darling?" said Bess. "I must take some pictures of them later." Mapani told the girls that alpaca fleece was valuable. Generally it is white, but sometimes has gray or brown hair mixed in. The wool is soft enough to be used for clothing and is very expensive. "Is that the finest wool there is?" George queried. The Indian shook his head. "The wool from the vicuña is the finest in the world. The animal looks very much like the alpaca, but is a little smaller. Its fleece is soft and silky. In Incan times, only royalty and aristocracy were allowed to use this wool. It is said that the Inca himself, ruler of the whole nation, had the finest kind of garments, most of them made from vicuña wool. But after the first wearing, they were destroyed." "What a dreadful waste!" George exclaimed. "I agree," said Mapani. "Furthermore, those precious things were lost for all time. Had they been saved, we could have enjoyed looking at them." The Indian mentioned that a third animal in Peru whose fleece was used was the llama. "He's larger than the other two." Mapani said that the llama had been a beast of burden in Peru for many, many centuries. Its wool is coarse and greasy and is used mostly for heavy blankets, sacks, rope, and halters for the beasts. Of course, cloth for the very poor people has been woven from it since ancient times. "They probably used the hides to make sandals," Carla suggested. "I'll bet," George said with a grin, "that those old Incas wore the soft leather next to their skin so they wouldn't itch from the prickly wool." The others laughed. By the time they had finished lunch, the rain had ceased and Bess urged the group to go outside so she could take some snapshots of the alpacas. After taking a couple of pictures, Bess handed the camera to Nancy. "Please snap a picture of me seated on the alpaca," she said. "And don't let anybody slap him so he'll run away." Nancy took the camera and Bess walked forward. She swung herself up onto the back of the animal. "Ready!" she called out. Instantly, the alpaca bent its knees and sat down in the roadway. "Oh, you mean old thing!" Bess scolded. She slapped the animal gently. "Stand up!" When the alpaca did not obey, Nancy laughingly snapped the picture anyway. Mapani walked forward and with a chuckle said, "Miss Marvin, you must weigh more than 100 pounds. That is the limit of a burden an alpaca will carry. He cannot be coaxed. You may as well get off." She grinned, but did not reveal her weight. She got off the animal and instantly changed the subject. "I'm ready to go take pictures of the ruins." Nancy herself was eager not only to see the great archaeological wonder, but to hunt for a clue to the mystery of the crossword cipher. From the hotel, Mapani led the way up a path to an admission stand where they paid a small fee. Then they began the climb. To their left, the mountainside rose steeply and was an amazing sight of endless series of 3 to 5 foot stone-faced terraces. They varied from 15 to 30 feet in width. Running up alongside the terraces were many stone stairways. From them branched alleyways between stone huts in various states of ruin. Mapani explained that originally the dwellings stood from 8 to 10 feet in height and had thatched roofs. Archaeologists believe that the workers lived on one side of the city, the aristocracy on the other. They think this because one section was better built and had larger rooms than the other. At the very top stood a fine building that was like a convent. The chosen virgins of the sun lived there. These maidens spent their entire time in religious work, like the nuns today, and did a lot of weaving. Bess looked to her right, where the ground fell steeply to the river. It would be easy to tumble down out of this city and drop all the way to the water, she said with a shudder. Don't look down, George advised. The girls followed their guide as he wound in and out of the narrow, ancient streets. Nancy tried to imagine what the place had looked like when it was a flourishing city. She entered one building which was larger than any of the others she had seen. It had several connecting rooms, and Nancy concluded that this might have been the home of a high official. By the time she returned to the entrance, her companions were out of sight. Thinking they had gone down the steep flight of steps nearby, she went after them. When Nancy reached the foot, the others were not around, so she walked forward to the edge of the path and gazed down the precipitous drop at the jungle-like valley. As she contemplated the gorgeous view with mountains in the distance, Nancy became aware of a thudding sound behind her. Turning, she was horrified to see a huge bundle of thatch rolling at fast speed in her direction. Should it hit her, she would be swept off the mountainside. Just before it reached her, Nancy gave a mighty leap and hurdled the bundle. "Oh!" she cried out as the thatch tumbled over the edge and disappeared. As she stood trembling, Nancy heard a man's voice and looked off to one side to see who he was. An Indian workman was busy putting thatch on a roof of one of the stone huts, which was being restored. He pointed up the steps. "Senor!" he called out. Nancy looked there but could see nothing. She wondered whether the bundle had been accidentally dislodged by someone or thrown on purpose. The workman kept on pointing excitedly and calling, "Senor!" Nancy was convinced now that he had seen someone throw the bundle. Running up to him, she asked, "Who was it? What did he look like?" The workman raised his hands in a helpless gesture to indicate he did not speak English. "Espanol?" Nancy asked, thinking she might manage a few simple phrases in Spanish. Again the man shook his head. She assumed he spoke Quechua. She would find Mapani and bring him back to question the workman. Maybe he can get a clue to the senor this man's talking about. Nancy had a long hunt before she was able to locate the others. Immediately, Bess hugged her friend. "Nancy, we've been looking for you because we wanted to go after that dreadful Luis Losa." "What do you mean?" "We saw him among the ruins," said Carla. Upon hearing of Nancy's adventure, the others were sure that Losa had tossed the bundle of thatch in her direction. "If he's here, we'll find him," George vowed. "Come on, let's separate and track him down." End of chapter 14.